Tonight, a new book examining the inner workings of the Ulster Unionist Party has been launched. Here's a reminder of the party's influential place in history.
A neutral Ulster is impossible.
Ulster stands at the crossroads.
We can persuade people that if you vote Mike, you get Colin.
We founded Northern Ireland. I think it would be unthinkable to think that the Ulster Unionist Party wouldn't be around for the centenary of our wee country.
A quick reminder of Ulster Unionism through the decades. I've been speaking to one of the book's authors, Professor Jon Tonge, and to the former UUP Director of Communications, David Kerr. I began by asking Jon Tonge if it's fair to say the book tells the story of the decline of a once dominant political force.
Yes, the party has suffered a chronic lack of confidence through 2 decades of electoral trauma. So whilst the Ulster Unionist Party has many strengths, a very loyal membership, many of those members have been in the party for decades, but they've suffered so many electoral reverses since the Good Friday Agreement that they are wondering how they lay a glove on the DUP. In many ways, many Ulster Unionist Party members are bewildered as to why the DUP is doing so well, given that they stole a lot of the Ulster Unionist Party clothes, and there's a problem of how to respond to the DUP.
Does the book identify a turning point where things started to go wrong?
Well, the Good Friday Agreement was the obvious turning point. Now, quite a lot of Ulster Unionist Party members didn't truly believe in some of the Good Friday Agreement. 59%, which is only a narrow majority, actually voted in favour of the Good Friday Agreement. And that percentage would be even lower if there was a referendum on the agreement tomorrow. So in some ways you've got this paradox. You've got the Ulster Unionist Party leadership lauding the Good Friday Agreement as something that kept Northern Ireland in the United Kingdom, ended violence. It's an internationally lauded peace agreement and political agreement, but you've got members who are uncertain whether to trumpet the Good Friday Agreement, because when we asked Ulster Unionist Party members, who benefited most from the peace and political process, nearly 80% said nationalists had benefited more.
David, you were there in the inner circle in 1998. Were you aware that that was potentially the high watermark for the party, but also its moment of gravest danger?
I think we were fully aware when we were negotiating the agreement that there were clearly very strong aspects of it that were good for unionism, that were constitutionally going to safeguard unionism. But there were aspects of the agreement that were going to be very emotive for the unionist community, particularly around the reform of policing and the release of prisoners. So we were aware of that. But in its totality and in the round, we had to take a considered view at that time to proceed with the agreement, because we believed the constitutional gains with that agreement far outweighed the short-term pain that we were going to have to undertake or experience. And, in many ways, I suppose unionism is probably guilty of underselling it. Ulster Unionism is guilty of underselling the good parts of the agreement at that time. But on the other hand, the DUP also ruthlessly exploited the negative aspects of the agreement for unionism and used those to foment significant division within the party.
But at the moment, there are difficulties for the DUP in terms of Brexit, the absence of Stormont, and of course RHI, and we'll see what the outworkings are as far as that's concerned in due course. But still, despite all of that, the Ulster Unionist Party doesn't seem to be able to lay a glove on the DUP.
There are probably two key moments in the last decade that we can look back to. 2003, after the Assembly election in the autumn of 2003, there were the key defections, the defections of Arlene Foster and Jeffrey Donaldson in particular. Following that, you had the St Andrews Agreement. And you can look at that, and I mean, I have looked at this many times as being, in the short term, a strategic masterstroke by Peter Robinson to develop this proposal within the St Andrews Agreement that changed the way in which the First Minister and Deputy First Minister could be elected, as was previously designed under the Good Friday Agreement. St Andrews turned that into effectively a sectarian headcount. So you had an enormous pitched battle then in 2006 and 2007 then between the DUP and Sinn Féin as to who was going to reach the top position as they perceived it.
John, is it your view that for so long as we in Northern Ireland define our differences in sectarian terms, the DUP will always trump the Ulster Unionist Party? Because in the battle against the SDLP and Sinn Féin, the DUP does it better.
There's no hard and fast rule that the DUP will remain top dog. And when Peter Robinson was DUP leader, he cautioned, he said, look at the rise, our rapid rise. Well, we can descend rapidly as well. So there's no hard and fast rule. But yes, the changes to the St Andrews Agreement were significant. Robin Swan, as the current leader, doesn't pretend there's any magic wand he can wave to change things round. And the one area where there has been big policy difference in recent years between the UUP and the DUP on Brexit, where the UUP took a Remain position, well, that didn't really work because a majority of UUP voters and indeed members actually prefer the Brexit position.
Just on the issue of membership and attracting a new membership, I mean, it's strong, for example, in Fermanagh. That's your home turf.
Yep.
Why is it apparently still strong at grassroots level, but the further up the political pyramid you go, the weaker the party seems to be?
Well, I attribute that to the St Andrews Agreement and the outworking of it. I attribute that to the fact that a lot of Unionist voters who were former Ulster Unionist voters who now vote DUP in Assembly and Westminster elections have gravitated towards the DUP, not for any particular policy reason, but because they believe the propaganda around the need to make sure we return a Unionist First Minister.
Did personalities bring that support with them as well? I mean, was it
yes.
Jeffrey Donaldson, Arlene Foster,
yes.
Simon Hamilton? Is that a huge issue here?
Of course they did. Lagan Valley, you can look at the politics, the Unionist politics of Lagan Valley. Jeffrey Donaldson literally turned that completely around in favour of the DUP. The DUP were the minority party prior to Jeffrey switching over. So of course, but look, you can't rest, you can't forever agonise about defections. The fact is, people leave parties, people join parties. The Ulster Unionist Party has to rebuild. It is rebuilding, but it is going to have to set itself very clearly apart from the DUP as a very credible alternative.
Was that a major miscalculation? I mean, you've talked about the Good Friday Agreement. David's talked about 2003, the St Andrews Agreement. Was the loss of Jeffrey Donaldson one of those iconic moments where the switch flicked and the political fortunes of the two parties changed, possibly forevermore? I mean, should David Trimble have done more to hold on to Jeffrey Donaldson?
I don't think David Trimble could have done much more, although I do think David Trimble stayed too long. Some colleagues tried to persuade David Trimble to stand down before he had his nadir in Upper Bann. You know, he collected a Nobel Peace Prize, and yet the voters of Upper Bann didn't want him. I mean, undoubtedly the DUP hoovered up a lot of talent. Some went on to be DUP special advisors, some were election candidates. The DUP hoovered up the UUP's talent, there's no doubt about that. I think the other problem the Ulster Unionist Party has is it sent out amazingly mixed electoral messages over the last few years. One minute you have an alliance with the Conservatives, then you have pacts with the DUP, then you have vote Mike, get Colin,
absolutely,
to go across the divide, which didn't work and was immediately shot down by other UUP MLAs. I think, under Robin Swan, there is a greater clarity. You vote for an Ulster Unionist, you'll get an Ulster Unionist. I think the other thing is, for all this talk of pan-unionism, and pacts may be strategically useful for the Ulster Unionist Party, there isn't going to be a merger of the two parties. So,
and Robin Swan's been absolutely clear about that.
Absolutely clear, and the members are with him on that. Only 15% of Ulster Unionist Party members want a merger, but they need to get their electoral messages consistent and straight, because they were all over the place.
And there was a failure to do that, and John's already touched on the fact that on Brexit the party was broadly seen as being pro-Remain. Now you couldn't put a blade of grass between the DUP and the Ulster Unionist Party, it seems to me, on the issue of Brexit. And we had Mike Nesbitt's not so very long ago, modern progressive unionism, and with the greatest respect to Robin Swan, he doesn't use that kind of language. He's not trying to occupy the same space as his immediate predecessor. Is that fair to say?
I think the challenge for the Ulster Unionist Party has to be to set itself apart from the DUP. There will be times, in interests of pro-union politics, they will cooperate in constituencies. That goes without saying. That's the history of unionism in this country. But they have to set themselves out as a separate, distinct electoral alternative. They have to regain the trust of the unionist electorate, and to do that they have to continue to work very hard, and they have to articulate policies that resonate with the unionist electorate, and they have to be they have to, as the saying goes, keep their noses clean. They have to exploit opportunities when other people in the DUP are making mistakes in former ministerial roles. They have to exploit internal problems within the DUP, whether there are issues around the behaviour of certain people within the party. That's politics, Mark. It's ruthless. And the DUP were very, very good at doing it to the Ulster Unionist Party. But that they literally have to up their game, and they have to work very, very hard to get back to be the dominant force.
Do you think, John, that Robin Swan is sufficiently ruthless as a politician to turn everything around?
I think it's still too early to judge. I mean, he's got a big membership to play with. They're still well-resourced, the Ulster Unionist Party. Their membership is still considerably larger than the DUP.
Do you think they'll do well in May's local government elections?
Well, this is the big test. I mean, you wonder where they'll go if they bomb in the council elections. If that's after the RHI report, assuming the RHI report is fairly critical of certain DUP ministers, you do wonder where they would go.
Well, it's receivership at that stage, isn't it?
This is the chance for a free hit for the Unionist electorate. They don't need to worry about a Sinn Féin First Minister, right. so they can take on the DUP if they want to. So the Ulster Unionist Party, it's not a case of whether they'll do well. They have to do well. Yeah. Otherwise, the future of the party would be called into question.
Well, do you think they will do well?
Well, the other side of it, we'll see. I'm not close enough. I'm not involved with it. But the other side of it is, you have to look back. The last council election in 2014, the Ulster Unionist Party returned 88 councillors. The DUP returned 130 councillors. So there's not that much. Really, in terms of the difference between the parties, it's not that big as people maybe realise. In the interests of unionism, you need a strong Ulster Unionist Party. I think for unionism to endure and for unionism to be strong and to attract sufficient support should a border poll ever come, it has to maximise its electoral engagement and its electoral returns. So it's important to have a strong Ulster Unionist Party, as it is important, arguably, to have a strong DUP, TUV, PUP, etc. The more unionist engagement politically there is, and the more support for pro-union parties there is, the better it is for unionism. So I think there was a school of thought in the DUP, maybe around the time of the agreement, and 15 years ago perhaps, that they were setting out to destroy the Ulster Unionist Party. I think they now see that that was a strategic error on their part. Even though they profited from it, it certainly doesn't do unionism any good.